So hopefully I beat Taylor's dance tonight. And I passed the family exam, which are good ways to start. Thanks for being here today. Let me start with a question. Is there a connection between the gut and the brain? And if so, can we target the gut to treat brain diseases? This is a question that you all are having because we know that it's a hot topic. But let me tell you, this question didn't even cross my mind when I was working as a young physician back in my country, Colombia, treating patients with rotavirus, which is a pathogen in the gut. I never imagined that my curiosity regarding mechanisms of immune response against rotavirus will lead me to a career in science outside my country, and even better, here at Krembil. Today, I am a neuroimmunologist, and I am trying to understand the connection between the brain and the gut after brain injury. And we are trying to understand the role of the immune response after that brain injury. Neuroscientists always have been thinking about the brain as an isolated and independent organ. But we are learning now, with more and more evidence, that there is a really integrated relation between the gut, the body, and the brain. Whether it is through soluble proteins, cells, neurons, and even environmental triggers such as diet, we know that they are all interacting together and then communicating with the brain. And which is even more interesting is that we have the gut, and within the gut, we have viruses, bacteria, and parasites that are living with us all the time. They also talk with cells, neurons, with the diet, and later on, they go up to the brain and talk together. Fascinating, right? What is really important for us is that within the gut, there are really highly specialized immune cells. We call them regulatory B cells and T cells. And imagine they are like brakes in our cars, preventing from our engines from overheating. But what is really more interesting for me is that those gut immune cells can migrate to the brain. And not only into the brain, but also into the layers that covers the brain that we call the meninges. And they help to dampen the inflammation over there. We know that there is a fine balance between the gut and the brain. And when that balance shifts, whether it is because there is too much inflammation or not enough, that's when the problems in the brain starts. And that leads us to diseases such as neurodegenerative diseases, epilepsy. But maybe you haven't never thought that that connection between the brain and the gut will also lead us to other conditions such as obesity, or even anxiety or stress. Surprising, right? The other thing that is really important to highlight here is that this connection between the gut and the brain is what we call the gut-brain axis. All the cells are always interacting between the gut and the brain. And recently I discovered that during multiple sclerosis, some of those immune cells from the gut can migrate into the brain and into the meninges. But what is really more surprising is that this is a wide phenomenon that does not only occur in autoimmune diseases, but also in other diseases such as Alzheimer's disease and Parkinson's disease. And this is all the novel research that we are doing here at Krembil. So let me go back to our initial question. Is there a connection between the gut and the brain? And my answer is definitely yes. We know that there are gut-derived immune cells that are found in people with brain diseases. But perhaps a better question is how we can use all this information that I am presenting to you today to develop new understanding regarding how brain diseases develop and how we can create or develop new treatments for those diseases. So in my lab, we are doing really simple interventions to tackle this point. We are trying to change the composition of the gut microbiome and see if with that we can boost the immune cells to migrate into the brain. And even something even more simple is we are trying to change our diet. What if I tell you that what we eat will be important to boost our immune system in the gut to help us dampening inflammation in the brain? So far in our lab, we know that there are a few diets, like the ones that are enriched in fiber, for example, that help us to increase the amount of immune cells in the gut and favor them to migrate into the brain and the meninges during Alzheimer's disease. The more I understand and study the gut-brain axis, the more excited I get. But also, the more clear is to me that we need a holistic perspective to tackle brain diseases. Neuroscientists are trying to understand what is happening in the brain. My role is trying to understand what is happening in the brain from outside the brain. And what I love of being here at Krembil is the fact that, like immune cells, which come with different flavors, I am surrounded by amazing scientists. We have doctors, we have bioengineers, we have mathematicians, we have brilliant trainees working all together to solve big problems. And I am convinced that what we are doing will help us to develop new ideas, new approaches, and new treatments for brain diseases. Thank you so much.
Okay, that's like all amazing stuff. I have a feeling there's $1 million grant waiting for you somewhere. Yeah. So my question would be, what exactly is it about a good diet, right? What is it in that good diet that can help promote that migration of those helpful immune cells to the brain and then lessen the risk of brain disease?
Yeah, I think that's our goal question.
That's the $1 million question. Yeah.
So that's why I need the $1 million grant.
Okay.
So this is what I can tell you so far. It is an intricate relation. There are many, many variables working there. We already have a list of some factors that we do think can impact in a positive or in a negative way the boost of those immune cells in the gut. We not only want them to migrate into the brain, we also want them to produce soluble proteins that can maybe also go into the brain if they cannot migrate directly there. And within the diet, we already have some components from the diet that can help us to achieve that goal. In addition, the other thing that is interesting is trying to ask which are the components of the gut microbiome that maybe we can increase or decrease to have more of those helpful cells in the brain.
Right. Amazing. Okay, good luck with your work. Thank you so much, Olga.